Hi, welcome to this lecture on environment adaptation for animals. On this series of videos, we will now consider on the relationship between temperature and animals. So are we just endotherms and ectotherms, or are there some variation among the animal kingdom? And if we are endotherms and having a high body temperature, how we can keep the temperature inside our body in, for example, in freezing, extreme cold. Hi, welcome to this lecture on environment adaptation for animals. On this series of video, I will consider now on the relationship between temperature and the animals. So are we just ectotherms and endotherms, or are there some variation among the animal kingdom? And if we are endotherms having a high body temperature, how we can keep the temperature inside our body in cold weather. But let's start with this kind of summer picture. There's a flower and a bumblebee. These bumblebees, they should not fly at all. They need 30 degrees Celsius to flap the wings fast enough to be able to fly. And how they can do it? Well, of course, if it's very hot day, they can fly very easily, but they can increase the heat production in the mitochondria because we have this uncoupling protein that is a proton leak channel. So the protons are not anymore producing ATP on the mitochondrial membrane, but now they are producing heat. And then, of course, when these flight muscles are moving, they are producing some heat also. But as you can see, understand that, okay, if it's cold weather, for example, during the fall, they need more sugar to increase the energy metabolism. They need also to produce more movement of the muscle to increase the temperature before they can fly. So the temperature at least affects on these bumblebees. And the thermoregulation, quite often we divide animals in endotherms and ectotherms. And the endotherms, they are warming the body by the metabolic production, not just behavior. And because endotherms are warming the whole body and not just the fly muscles, so that's why these bumblebees are not endotherms. Then these ectotherms, the body temperature is not elevated by metabolism. Of course, every time we have any kind of chemical reaction, we will produce some heat. Or when we have, for example, this bumblebee is moving the muscles, there's always some heat production, but it's so small, so it doesn't have effect on the whole animal level. So, in principle, okay, if they are warmed by metabolic production, they are endotherms, otherwise they are poikilotherms or ectotherms. And we can say that, okay, in endotherms, they have thermoregulation, so they regulate the temperature, that's why they are homeotherms, and these other ones are always non-thermally regulating animals. But it's a little bit not always so strict. So endotherms, we have regional differences. If you have ever measured the temperature in the tip of your nose, it's colder than under your arm. So we have the regional differences, and we can have some non-thermoregulating endotherms also. Because if they are living in the environment where there's no need for this thermoregulation. And then we also have some ectotherms that are regulating the temperature, for example, with behavior, like these bees. And also we have some ectotherms that are actually having endothermic organs. So they are heating a single organ to keep it very active. And these are the themes that we will discuss during these lectures. The temperature is affecting not only in in the bubble beads, but also its effects on the living possibilities of endotherms. So, although we can produce heat to keep the body warm, usually we try to avoid the extreme conditions. And that's why, for example, from the Finland, we have migrating birds, and now in the springtime we are waiting until they come, but it will take a few months more. So they are going for the winter time for warmer climate because either because it's too cold here or because there's no food because it's too cold here. And in some animals, there's a straight line. So, for example, in this eastern phoebus, so it's actually not overwintering in areas where the average minimum temperature is below -4 degrees of Celsius. So it's animals seems to be that they know where they can survive for the winter time, and that can affect that. Okay, if the climate is changing, then the living area is changing. For example, in North Sea, it's been the temperature has risen in the sea water about 1 degree of Celsius during the last decades, and about 50% of the fish population have moved northward. And actually, this is not only in the sea, North Sea, but it's a global change. So there are more species invading the polar latitude areas because it's not so cold there anymore. Then, if the temperature is changing, we can also predict that, okay, where they are living in the future. We are going to discuss on hibernating during these videos a little bit later, but the idea of hibernating is that, okay, you will reduce the energy consumption by lowering your body temperature. But actually, you are not lowering it to 0 or to freeze temperatures, but you will lower it to a little bit above the 0. So you are maintaining the hibernating body temperature. And that's why if the environmental temperature is very cold, you need more metabolism to maintain this hibernating body temperature. And if you need a lot of metabolism, you will consume a lot of your energy stores. And if you don't have so much energy stores that you need, you are in a problem. And that's why it's been estimated that when the temperature is rising, these hibernators can find places in north. For example, these bats can travel to more north because the hibernation is possible there. But at the same time, when the temperature is rising, the problem can be that on the oxygen consumption. Because when we are rising the body temperature, we are also increasing the resting metabolic rate. And we are not increasing the maximum oxygen consumption. We learned that, okay, the oxygen consumption was affected by the body size or how fast you are moving, etc. But it was not affected directly by the temperature. And in tropical fish, the resting rate and the maximum rate of oxygen consumption are not so different from each other. And if the resting rate is increasing, actually in 33 degrees of Celsius in this cardinal fish, they are overlapping already. So that means that, okay, if the animal wants to move at all, it has to use always anaerobic metabolism because it can't consume more oxygen than it's already doing. And that will cause that, okay, they are in a severe problem. But also the temperature can affect that. Okay, if the temperature is changing, then also the behavior should be changing, because animals usually a little bit optimize their annual cycle. And for example, if there's food, okay, we will have the offspring at certain time, etc. And if one animal is changing the behavior, then everybody else should also be affected in the food net. But that's not always the case. For example, in Netherlands, the caterpillars are in the trees a little bit earlier, year after year. But still the great tit, they lay the eggs at the same time of the year. And that's why the days between the when they are laying the eggs and the peak of these, when there's a lot of caterpillars in the trees, it's been reduced. So they are getting these the food, trying to catch the food for the nestlings a little bit too late, and it's getting more difficult. What about then the temperature and the heat? If we have a box and another box and put them in the room temperature and place them for day or whatever, the box temperature will be quite equal. But if we have a water tank and place these boxes inside the water tank, the temperature of this water will be raised with this small box only very slightly, and with this large box it will have a dramatic effect. And that's why this large box has more heat than the small box. So it's depends on the mass of the particle. And that's one of the things that is affecting acting on the temperature and animal relationships. So if you have a large box, meaning that you are a large animal, you are having a lot of heat inside your body. But in small animals, there's less heat, although your body temperature can be the same. Thank you.